A lot has been said about the beating of a promoter named Mark Anthony Bell at a Death Row Records Christmas party in 1995. It was even recreated in the Unsolved series on USA Network and Netflix that I was a co-producer on. But the details about what happened are wild, and I think this story establishes two big things. The serious turn that the East Coast-West Coast rivalry took following the murder of Suge's friend Jake Robles in Atlanta, and that Tupac's assault on Southside Crip Orlando Anderson in Las Vegas on the night of Tupac's murder wasn't an isolated incident. When the rivalry escalated to gang violence, Pac was, unfortunately, right in the middle of it. In August of 1995, Suge Knight gave his infamous speech at the Source Awards, where he dissed Puffy on stage.
Any artist out there want to be an artist and want to stay a star, don't want to have to worry about the executive producer trying to be all in the video, all on the record, dancing. Come to Death Row.
The following month, on September 23rd, 1995, a Campanella Park Pyru named Jake Robles, a.k.a. Big Jake, who was close friends with Suge Knight and worked at Death Row Records, was shot while he and Suge were leaving the Platinum Club in Atlanta, following a party thrown by Jermaine Dupri. Robles clung to life in an Atlanta hospital for a few weeks before succumbing to his injuries. And an alleged bad boy associate named Anthony Wolf Jones has long been considered the prime suspect. Jones was himself killed outside of a different Atlanta nightclub nearly a decade later. But what's more important is that Suge Knight reportedly held Puffy indirectly responsible for Jake's murder. On December 15th, 1995, just 3 months after Big Jake is shot in Atlanta, Death Row Records is having a Christmas party at a home in the Hollywood Hills. And a record promoter from New York named Mark Anthony Bell, who went to high school with Puffy, decides he wants to attend. He'd done work for various record companies and had worked for Death Row approximately 30 times, so he had a history with them. One of Bell's friends had been hired as a photographer for this Christmas party, and Bell wants to go to the party, but he doesn't have a ticket. So he goes with his friend, the photographer, down to Death Row's offices the afternoon of the party, and Suge's assistant either gives him a ticket or tells him he shouldn't have a problem getting in without one. On a previous visit to LA just a few weeks after Jake Robles died, Bell had been approached in the lobby of that same Death Row Records building after meeting with Death Row to inquire about work. As he was leaving through the lobby, a Death Row employee handed Bell a typewritten note asking him to, quote, reveal any information on Combs, Combs' family, or associates. The note instructed him to reply on the note and to then simply drop it on the floor. And Bell apparently refused to do this. So about a month and a half later, Bell and his friend arrive at the Christmas party around 10:30 at night, and his friend goes to work photographing the party. And the following account of what happened has been cobbled together from multiple reports by the LAPD and the FBI. At around 2 a.m., Suge Knight arrives with an entourage, and while Suge is making the rounds, he encounters Bell and asks him, why didn't you cooperate previously? Apparently a reference to the note he was passed weeks earlier at Death Row's offices. And Suge tells him, you didn't want to cooperate, and that he's a man of his word and would do what he said. But Bell tells Suge that, quote, he didn't know anything and he didn't have any information regarding where Puffy stayed when he came to LA. But Bell tells him anyone can get the phone number for Puffy's office in New York and call him. And this turns out to be not the answer Suge wanted to hear. So according to Bell, Suge says to come upstairs where they could finish their conversation. And this is like the part in the horror movie where the audience is like, do not go upstairs. But Bell follows Suge upstairs to the VIP room where he's going to get a special form of VIP service. The people in the VIP room supposedly included a photographer for the New York Times and someone from MTV and various other media people, and also Bell's photographer friend that he had arrived with. And that friend asks him if everything's okay, And Bell says yes, but, quote, gave him a bad look. It's like, does this look like I'm okay? So Suge allegedly has his brother-in-law, Norris Anderson, clear everyone out of the VIP room and then stand outside the door. And left in the room with Bell is allegedly Suge Knight, Tupac Shakur, Dr. Dre, a male black with gold teeth whose name Bell doesn't catch, so he's just referred to in this report as Gold Teeth, and 2 other men. Suge puts a chair in the middle of the room and tells Bell to have a seat, and Suge takes a seat in front of him. Suge asks him about Puffy and asks again why Bell didn't cooperate, and Bell tells him he doesn't want to get involved. Suge asks him questions about Combs' parents, and where his mother lives, where Puffy's office is. And then this is interesting to me. Bell claims that Tupac would whisper into Knight's ear, and he would ask more questions. So it's like Tupac is feeding questions to Suge during this interrogation. And during these questions, Gold Teeth offers his own input, which is hitting Bell on the side of the face. And he says, this is for the person who died. Most likely a reference to Jake Robles. And we're going to kill you. And he or another person in the room also says, that was our homie that died. So Bell is beaten with fists and champagne bottles. And Suge tells him he's going to have to deliver Puffy. And Tupac says Bell is lying about not knowing where Combs was at. And one of the other men tells him, I could kill you now if Knight says so. And then Suge goes into the bathroom and comes out with a glass that Bell believes is full of urine. And Suge hands the glass of piss over to Bell, and lucky for him, Gold Teeth hits him again, and this makes him drop the glass, and at that point he makes a break for it. And he runs out to a nearby balcony, hoping to either jump off of it or to at least be seen and get someone's attention. But Suge and Tupac grab him before he can get over the railing, and he holds on tight, and it takes about half a minute for them to break him free, hitting his hands to get him to let go. But lucky for him, even though he doesn't make it over, the gambit works, because downstairs, his friend the photographer sees him, quote, spread out on the balcony, and he thinks he sees Tupac making a stabbing motion at Bell. And as they're dragging him back into the room, Bell claimed that Tupac is hitting him on the neck. So they get him back inside the room, and Bell's friend said that he saw Suge come back outside and straighten out a Christmas tree. Because, you know, Suge's all about that holiday spirit. So the friend decides that Bell's life is in danger, and so he leaves and drives down the hill and flags down some police officers and tells them that Suge is up the hill trying to, quote, squeeze his friend for information, and that he's afraid that his friend was being stabbed. So the police take off up the hill to go check it out. Meanwhile, back inside the room, the altercation turns into a full-on beatdown after they've dragged Bell off of the balcony, with everyone hitting and kicking him and throwing things at him. And Suge supposedly says body blows only. And Gold Teeth puts Bell in a chokehold for a minute or two and says this is for our friend that died. And Bell nearly passes out and decides to just go with it, and he plays dead. And while he's on the floor, someone takes his watch off his wrist, and he also loses his gold chain and his wallet. And his attackers also consider taking his diamond earring. Altogether, about 30 grand worth of items and cash are taken off of him. Then they back off and he stands up, and Suge suddenly acts like the beating never happened. And he offers him money, allegedly saying, if you come over to our side, I'll make you rich. And you can be a part of this team, I can make you rich. Do you want to make $500,000 or $1 million? Do you have friends that could deliver? So it's like, you may not know where Puffy stays in LA, but I bet you know people who do. And then they hear people talking on portable radios, and they get the heads up that the cops have arrived. And Suge walks Bell to the bathroom and tells him to clean himself up, and that if he wants his jewelry back, he can call Suge tomorrow and, quote, we'll talk about it. Gold Teeth then asks Suge, should I do him? And Suge was probably thinking, what, I just asked the guy to clean himself up and call me tomorrow. Like, weren't you listening? So Suge says he's good. And Gold Teeth tells Bell, you're lucky that he said you were good. And I think Gold Teeth needs to just settle down. So Bell cleans himself up. Suge supposedly tells Norris Anderson at the door not to let him leave until he's cleaned up. Suge and Tupac and Gold Teeth take off. I have no idea where Dre supposedly was in all of this. He's like a character who pops up at the beginning of a story and then the author forgets about him. So I have no clue if he had anything to do with this other than just allegedly being there. So Bell cleans up, heads downstairs, and he's met by a police officer who tells him that his friend was worried about his life. But since Suge and the others were only 10 feet away and he still feared for his safety, Bell told the officer that everything was all right. And she notes that he has a bloody lip and scratches on his neck, but Bell just says that he fell down, which is technically true. But since he doesn't really want to cooperate with the dude standing right there, he just wants to get out of there, so the officer calls him a cab, and Bell leaves. He then goes to the house of a friend, and his friend's sister dresses his wounds, and then the next day he goes to the hospital, and eventually he goes home to New York. After returning to New York, Bell reportedly starts getting pages with the number 187, which he obviously interprets as threats. So the LAPD launches an investigation, even though he wasn't really cooperative at the scene, and they classify the case as a robbery due to the jewelry and cash that was allegedly taken. And the detectives get the FBI involved because Suge has allegedly been involved in several similar incidents that the FBI was apparently looking into. Detectives also reach out to Compton PD in the hope of identifying Gold Teeth, but that gets nowhere. And to this day, the identity of Gold Teeth has not been proven. All we can really do is guess. It should be noted that this incident happened while Snoop was in the middle of his murder trial. And according to the LA Times, Suge had already had 2 strikes against him from an assault in 1992. So Suge is in serious jeopardy here. If law enforcement can make a case for the assault on Bell, Suge could be facing 25 years in prison. And so this investigation drags on for months, with everyone on the death row side seemingly giving detectives the runaround. And the deputy district attorney ultimately decides not to press charges because Bell didn't report the incident to the officers at the scene when it happened. So they'd missed the opportunity to, quote, recover important evidence and even arrest the suspects on the spot. And as a result, there was a high likelihood of an unsuccessful prosecution. But I guess just to be safe, Death Row pays Bell a $600,000 settlement, virtually guaranteeing that he doesn't press charges. According to the LA Times, before receiving his money, he signed a statement declaring that he was virtually certain that Knight played no part in the assault, and that he questioned the accuracy of his own statements to police at the scene because he was drunk at the time. Ultimately, the case was closed by the LAPD as cleared other, and no one was ever charged in connection with the Mark Anthony Bell beating. So, as the rivalry between Death Row and Bad Boy expanded beyond the recording studio, as violent gang members on both sides started getting involved, it went from a war of words to kind of an actual war with blood being spilled, as we all know. And 9 months after the Bell beating, Tupac was dead.